The Stanley Parable is a walking simulator. That is the first hurdle I have to overcome when I explain to you why the Stanley Parable is a game every designer needs to play. Developer Davey Wreden, the main man behind the initial Half-Life mod version of the Stanley Parable, is and was completely self-taught. Davey even states in a 2014 Rev 3 Games GDC interview that the reason for lack of gameplay in the Stanley Parable was due to his limitations with the source development code, a weakness that later became a strength. He wanted to make an experience which stemmed from one simple idea, which in my opinion is how all great games start. That idea was, what if you could disobey the narrator?
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
Quickly followed the cascade of gameplay choices which elevate this experience to the surface and really make it wondrous to behold on the first playthrough, and the next, and the next. But I'm getting ahead of myself. For those that do not know, what is the Stanley Parable in short? Well, like I said, it's a walking simulator. But what's more important than that label that is slapped on the front of it is, what is the context? In game design, context determines everything else that follows. You cannot simply design a game around tasks and actions to achieve the win condition of the game. You have to give a reason why the player would want to do so. For most walking simulators, this doesn't come in the form of contextually significant gameplay choices which instead progress the story. This is where the Stanley Parable differs from the onslaught of walking simulators that followed after its release. The Stanley Parable, however vague, does have a story. It has a main story and many relevant side stories. Relevant being the most important word there. However, what's unique about this story is that there is no natural or coherent progression of the story. You can break the story, spoil yourself for different parts of the story, something which my girlfriend did when I made her play this game for the first time for this video.
No, this isn't right at all. You're not supposed to be here yet. This is all a spoiler. Quick, Stanley, close your eyes. Okay. We just have to get back to, oh, who am I kidding? It's all rubbish now. The whole story completely unusable. How about, rather than waste my time trying to salvage this nonsense, we'll just restart.
The progression is less of a tool to keep people engaged, but more so simply the context in which the gameplay choices occur. A very important difference that makes the core gameplay loop work. Without it, it would simply break. Just imagine being able to go through the story in order, without any experimenting or thinking, and then you would just start at the beginning to do it all over again. Yeah, it wouldn't work. This idea of having a flowchart in-game to show the players what they missed was even talked about in the Gamma Sutra interview. Wreden said, "There used to be a flowchart at one point in the game detailing all major branches, but we immediately found that it had the opposite effect on players to what we had intended." Moving on to another major aspect of the context, and truthfully the crux of the game as a whole, Kevin Brighting's incredible performance as the narrator.
Gotcha! Oh, come on. Did you actually think you had a loving wife who'd want to commit their life to you? I'm trying to make a point here, Stanley. I'm trying to get you to see something. Come inside. Let me show you what's really going on here. Sorry, but you're in my story now.
The narrator's job in the eyes of the designer was to 1. Provide a stimulating and aggressively difficult design problem as stated in the same 2014 Rev 3 Games GDC interview, but also to address the gaming industry as a whole. And looking back as I recently completed the game for the 8th time, It's frightening how the message has gotten even more true. Just for fun, let's take one ending as an example. If you have played the game to a point where you have jumped off a moving platform, gone through the wrong door a total of 4 times, played Minecraft, Portal, and set a baby on fire, you will know of the game's ending. A story thread that echoes the frustration in designers having to, or wanting to, pander to audiences. Giving them what's new and trendy, forcing themselves to change their design to make it more commercial, and in the end, it just ends up like a mess of misfortunate genres cobbled together. Does that sound familiar? Also, I would just love to point out that I am certain that when you press the 3 button for feedback, that is word for word what goes through every designer's head when they get a 3 out of 5 for user experience.
Oh, of course. A 3. Really? Maybe next time we can get you to form an actual opinion, you know?
Let's bring it back to the context. How powerful is context after all? Well, that's why I wanted my girlfriend to sit down and play the Stanley Parable with fresh eyes. I wanted to make sure I, along with the rest of the internet, didn't have a bias. After getting used to using a mouse and keyboard to play a game for the first time, she meandered around the environment, searching for anything to interact with, which is a fairly reasonable thing for any player to do, especially when given the context. However, once she gets to the 2 doors, the 2 infamous doors, the 2 choices for the player to make, she decides to immediately disobey, without any thought. The next feeling players can have after this event can usually be grouped into 2 categories, and may even be a reflection of their own personality and relationship with authority figures. These feelings are regret and triumph. Rebellious triumph. Incredibly powerful feelings that cannot be overlooked as a game designer. If you can tap into those feelings and manipulate them, do it. To take advantage of these 2 groups of feelings after the 2 doors, the player is greeted with a second choice, to either return back to the normal path, or to carry on being disobedient. As she immediately regretted her decision of disobeying in the first place, even trying to go back through the original door.
Oh, it sucked me in. Oh no!
I could guess that she wanted to return back to the main passageway, which she did. On her next playthrough, she went through the left door. The Stanley Parable is a truly unique concept, as it gives the player total freedom and aids in fulfilling any rebellious desires that any action game could give, just by providing 2 doors and a person telling you which one is the correct one and which one isn't the correct one. Not every player will get what this game is trying to convey through the context alone, but what the players do get is an experience like no other, and that right there is what we as game designers should always be attempting to achieve. And with the right idea, if Davey Reedon can self-teach his way to an indie mega hit and success in the games industry, then so can you. Thank you for watching the first episode in this new series. I wanted to shed light on some of the games which I just think have to be played by everyone who wants to be a game designer, either because it's an inspirational story, a unique concept, or just something completely different. And I feel like the Stanley Parable hits all 3. I also have my own studio, Crab Studios. If you want to follow any of the links in the description that lead to a Crab Studios page and follow them, that'd be greatly appreciated. Currently in the midst of finishing development on my board game called Block is the Stacking Game, and it's going to be hitting Kickstarter early 2020. So if you want to stay tuned for that, then make sure to follow those links in the description. Also, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and hit the notifications bell, because I'm going to be starting to release videos weekly as long as my university workload allows me to. So hopefully that works. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I shall see you in the next one. Goodbye.